Hi guys, I'm Ruth from Beltane Gifts, and today we're going to be making one of these cubes. So today we're going to be turning one of these felted balls that we made in a previous episode into one of these cubes. Now, cubes are quite a handy shape to make because it's showing you how to make flat sides and corners. Always great if you wanted to make something more geometric. So we're going to give that a go. And for that we're also going to need our felting surface, again trusty felting bag, our felting needles. These are colour coded for thickness. These are the generic needles, which means they don't have a gauge to them, which the proper needles do. These ones are done by length, so the longer the needle, the thicker the needle. I have the red needle, which is my longest and thickest needle, my yellow needle, which is my medium length, medium thickness needle, and my green, which is my shortest and thinnest needle. So when you see those in the videos, when I'm picking up a needle, that's what the colour means. You'll also be needing your finger protectors because we're going to be working very close in with the needle. There is a good chance you will stab yourself. These go on your index finger and your thumb, and they go on the hand that holds your work.
So today we're going to be felting a cube, so you'll need some finger protectors, something to felt on. I'm using a bag of rice. You'll need some felting needles, I've got my generic ones, and you'll also need a felted ball. So if you have a look at the felted ball section before, make yourself some of those. It needs to be kind of the thickness, consistency of like a large marshmallow. It needs to have a bit of give in it so that we can define the shapes. So I'm just choosing a needle here. This is the medium one, just having a bit of a stab. It's not sticking in how I'd like it to, so I'm swapping. This is the red needle, which is my largest needle. So what you need to do when you're creating a cube or any other shape with flat sides is, first off, you need to outline the shape you want to create. So here I'm just outlining a square. I'm making it smaller than the ball. It needs to be reasonably small because we're going to be pushing everything in, and the side's going to be squished in as we go, so it needs to be reasonably small to start off with. So there we go, I'm just stabbing over the outlined square and inside that outline as well, and what I'm doing is I'm stabbing from just one angle. Always be sure to remove your needle before you move on to your next stab, otherwise it could be bent or broken. And if you just see how flat that is now, that's because you're always stabbing at the right angle to what you want to create. So here I'm stabbing straight down, just outlining that square again. Don't worry if it's not too neat at this point, because we're going to be going over it and over it until we get the shape we want. So now we've done the outline, again we're stabbing straight down just within that outline and only within that outline. And this is how we get our straight edges. So you always stab just within the outline that you've created. Okay, so stabbing down. Now the good thing about this kind of felting, making these shapes, is that it's a great foundation for lots of other projects. So you can make squares and then add to the squares, add other shapes to the squares. You can create balls, pyramids, cubes, whatever shape you like. And this way you just break down your project into its component pieces. So you could make like a robot, you'd need several squares, maybe some rectangles. All you have to do is just outline those first shapes. So here it's the square, just to get that shape you want, and then just keep stabbing within that outline. Now it does take a bit of time just to bring everything together and tuck all the fibres in, because you'll find as you stab, see here, the remaining fibres is pushed outwards. Again, it's like wearing those control pants. The flap has to go somewhere, so you put yourself into the big pants and everything gets pushed upwards or outwards. So same with this, when things get pushed out, you just need to keep stabbing them back into place. And that's where most of the time takes with these, is that you'll find that the fibres around the edges are getting pushed outwards, making the outer edges a little bit more fluffy, and we'll need to go over those several times before everything will hold. So I'm swapping needles now, and that's because the larger needle I was using was great for pushing everything into place and holding it there to start off with, but you'll find that over time you'll have trouble getting your needle in, you're not stabbing as deeply. We really need to catch all those fibres and knit them together right in the centre of this project to start off with, and then work our way down to the smaller needles. So yeah, I'm using the medium needle, which for me is coloured in yellow, and I'm just going over the shape again, and I'm aiming for anything that's sticking out more. So this is the edge here. As I said, it was made fluffy because we were pushing everything in, so the fibres are kind of coming out at the sides. So I'm just paying particular attention right to the edges. You want to stab right along the edges, and we're trying to felt them together, just bring those fibres in. And the more you stab them, the more they'll knot together, the more they'll felt, and that way they'll hold their shape a lot better. I mean, if you wanted just a rough shape, you could stop at this point, but I definitely recommend going over, just stabbing everything that little bit more, because you'll find with time the fibres do start to come apart a little bit, especially if you're keeping your project in like a dampened room, and the moisture gets into the fibre, everything starts to expand just a little bit. So a little bit of extra time and effort spent at this stage, and everything will just hold its shape that little bit better. Now with these cubes, I also like to create these and then wrap them with a piece of ribbon, and they make lovely decorations for the Christmas tree, just little present boxes if you wanted. So it's always good to have some balls around that you can shape at the last minute if you need them. They make great gifts. All you have to do is just keep stabbing and going over. Now you'll see here it's starting to lose its shape a little bit around the edges. Again, don't worry. There we go, just stabbing from the other side, just along that edge and pushing everything in. With the cube, that's something you really have to look at, is that if you're looking straight down and you find the outside edges are starting to curve outwards slightly, you need to stab from the other side to bring them in. So here I'm stabbing straight down and just securing those fibres, but if I wanted to bring in the box here at the top right hand corner, I need to stab from the other side to bring that in. So with these, always take that little bit of time just to look at it from all the different angles, just to see where you need to move it and change it. If you find you have trouble just seeing how things should be and getting it right in your head and then translating it into your felting, then you can always print out some shapes beforehand, pictures of how you'd like your finished product to be, and then you can hold up your shape to that as you go along. So it's quite handy to have these little templates. For this one, if you wanted, you could just have a nice square put there on the side on a piece of paper. Just hold up your felting to that. Now if you're wondering what I'm doing at the moment, I've just got a piece of dark fibre that caught in with the yellow. I just wanted to get rid of that. You probably won't notice it when you first start out, but if you just get one strand, it can be enough to discolour a whole section of your felting. So if you do see it, just catch hold of the fibre that you don't want there, just grab it and pull it out, and then you might just need to felt over the top just to smooth it out, because you tend to pull out lots of other fibres at the same time. So I'm going to go to fast forward now, because there's going to be a lot of this stabbing and going over the same edges. So the only thing with this project is that you do need to keep going over and over the different sections. You've been over it already, you need to go over it again just to make sure it stays put and it's just the shape you want it to be. Now you might find that certain areas start to concave in where you've stabbed a little bit too much. Now you can deal with these basically in two different ways. You can either bring down the surrounding areas so that they're in line with the concave section, or you can add more fibres on top and just kind of patch the area that you've overstabbed. It's up to you how you do it, how you prefer to sort of fix the problem. I'd probably suggest at this stage where I am here as I'm working, is that I would bring down the other edges and just make that shape a lot more dense, bring everything in a lot closer. You may need to swap needles to do that. It depends how sort of you're going, how the needle feels. You sometimes find that you can get one needle that you can do absolutely everything with. If you do, I definitely recommend putting that aside, keeping it safe. We normally find one with the generic needles that works better than others, and it's just an amazing find. Just look after it, treasure it. So going over this area still, notice I'm focusing quite a lot on the edges, and that's because I do have those concaved areas. So I'm just bringing in these edges now, working from above and from the side, just to bring them down, just to get rid of some of that fluffiness. And you will notice as you're stabbing that certain areas are definitely more fluffy. As you stab them, the needle seems to go in further and leaves more of an indent. So that's kind of like your sign that that area needs more work. You can also, with your uncovered fingers, just give it a little bit of a squeeze, and you should be able to feel the difference as well between the really felted areas and the areas that needs a little bit more work. go, so I think I'm going to be doing that in just a moment. There we go, so yeah, just giving it a bit of a squeeze. I find it quite helpful to just give your work a little bit of a squeeze every now and then, just to see how thick it's getting, because you want it to firm up, but you can find that if you overfelt any one area, it becomes too firm so that you're unable to kind of shape it as easily. You really need to switch down to a much finer needle then to get any movement in the fibres. Okay, so now we've squeezed that, I think I'm going to fast forward again. There is something quite soothing about watching needle felting in fast forward. It's just something about the way the fibres get pushed in. So yes, just going over each of the areas again, going right up to those edges, just stabbing straight down, just bringing in those fibres. At the same time, occasionally just stabbing further in into the square as well, just bringing everything down to the same level. Now you may find occasionally, you can kind of see it here, that you'll end up with areas where it looks like you've got a little bit of a valley in your work. That can be where your fibres that you've been using, because we're using tops, if you haven't split them apart quite enough, sometimes they will spread and you'll end up with a little long hole, in which case just try to stab to either side of it, avoid that area, just stab to either side, and that'll bring all the other fibres down to the same level. Now just having a bit of a quick squeeze just to make sure that everything's around the same sort of consistency, and then just going over those edges again just to bring them in. And it's always good to take just a minute just to give it a good squeeze just to see where everything is, and that also helps to redistribute the fibre into the shape you want it, because you'll find it's almost like clay at this stage, because we've felted the ball first and then we've felted the shape. All the fibres interlocked, so you can just move it about with your fingers and then stab over the top just to get it to hold the shape you've moulded it into. So that's quite handy when you're making little creatures and things and you want to define certain areas, or here with the edges, just give them a bit of a pinch, move the fibres where you want them, and then just go over the top. Now I'm fast forwarding again so you don't have to keep up to this speed, and I'm just really focusing on those edges. Now it seems a bit counterintuitive just to stab the sharp edges that we want and round them out, but don't worry, because what I'm doing is just making sure that everything is felted together there along those edges, pushing in any loose bits, and then once we've got that nice rounded shape, it means that everything's interconnected, that everything's equally felted, and then we can go over again and really define those edges by stabbing right up to them in the right angle. So don't worry at this point. I know it looks like we spent all this time making a nice sharp cube and now we've just ruined it, but as I said before, if you don't like it, if you don't think it looks right, then you haven't finished yet. So notice here I'm just going around the outside edge, just stabbing in those bits, and then I'm stabbing along that square that we created before, going right up to those edges. Now this is what gives us our right angles and our nice sharp edges. You have to stab as close to the edge as possible without bringing your needle out through the side. Always make sure you're wearing your finger protectors for this bit, because it's so easy to miss and stab yourself. And the more you go over those right along those edges, the sharper those points will be, those edges will be. Okay, you can see it now, the edges are starting to come in a bit more and to look a little bit more even. You'll also find, because we've been stabbing those edges inwards, there's been some extra fibre pushed in, so you just need to go over the whole square all over again. Any bits that are sticking out more than others, that are a bit more bulbous or rounded, just really focus on those and just stabbing straight down at a right angle to each of the sides, and that'll just give you that nice, smooth, firm finish. And don't forget to do all of the sides. I like to rotate it, so I do 4 sides all in one go, just keep rotating in the same direction, and then I'll turn it on the sides and do the other 2 sides just to finish it off. So that's just about it there. If you wanted to, you could swap down to an even finer needle and keep going, end up with an even firmer and even smoother finish, but for me, for this, just as a demonstration, this will do. And you just give it a little bit of a squeeze there, just make sure everything's as you want it, and that should be about it. And that's how you make your cube.